And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. Phone number 574-2595, 95.3. That is 2595-953. You can also send a text message to 45364. Please put MNC at the beginning of that message. Also want to thank our sponsors, Second Amendment Arms and Range, located in New Carlisle. And of course, if you mention me, you get 50% off your range time. Yes, they have rentals, rifle, pistol, 10 lanes, indoors, all of that. And again, go to secondamendmentarms.net for more information. Okay, so we are live streaming. Go to youtube.com/Casey the Host. You can also go to twitch.tv/Casey the Host or facebook.com/Casey the Host. And yes, we are still giving away Black Rifle Coffee to all of my subscribers on YouTube. Not all of them are going to get it, but if you're a subscriber, you have a chance to win and get a bag of Black Rifle Coffee. All right, so before we dive into this, I got a buddy of mine here. His name is Tommy Teach. Now, Tommy Teach is the CEO of Bruzer Less Lethal, but he's also with Fortress Defense. And they do law enforcement training all over the country. They teach them. I mean, would it be fair to say that you teach tactics, weapons, basic procedures in dealing with all sorts of scenarios, including active shooters?
That is correct. We at Bruzer a lot. We do corrections and prison riot control type things. And with Fortress, we do more of the firearms training and the situational awareness training, whether it be pistol or rifle, so on and so forth.
All right, so we've got the Gilroy shooting in California.
Yes.
Okay. We've got these two over the weekend. We've got El Paso. We've got Ohio. Two of the shootings, Gilroy and in Ohio, police were able to neutralize the shooter in under a minute.
That is correct, because they were there.
In both of those cases, because they were there. We've got the situation, I believe it was El Paso, where you said he targeted a gun-free zone, specifically. If you look at the active shooters in these mass public shootings that we have had over the past few decades, 89% of them take place in a gun-free zone. 89%.
That is correct.
So as a professional, Tommy, when you are training officers, you know, how does the training for a situation like this really differ? I assume that they have to figure out if there is an armed civilian there. They've got to make sure that they don't mistake that person for the shooter. There's, you know, tactics that are involved. There's saving people versus, you know, getting people caught up in crossfire. Kind of go over just the basics of this.
Well, when you're dealing on a law enforcement end versus a civilian end, a civilian being somebody that's carrying a concealed weapon, the officers, there is so much chaos going on, and they have split seconds. I mean, just a matter of seconds to figure out what's going on, who's who, who's what, because there are civilians that carry concealed weapons, and they will a lot of times defend their families. They'll defend other people that are standing around that have no way to defend themselves. So you really have to know who's who. And 9 times out of 10, if you're a CCW holder, you're going to de-escalate out of that situation, and you're going to get out of there rather than sit there and face the threat unless the threat is actually in front of you. That's what we teach at our classes. We teach you how to de-escalate, get out of the situation, and get away from there. As a law enforcement officer, they're trained to go in. I mean, they're going right into the heart of the beast.
A dramatic video of that, too, in Ohio.
Right. There was a very dramatic video of that. With that being said, they are trained on a different level than most people that are carry concealed holders. Most people that have a carry concealed, they'll go to a class or two on average, and that's okay for them, or they'll go to one every year or whatever. Officers are put through this type of stress inoculation type training. They're put into in their training to deal with active shooters, or I prefer to call them active murderers, because that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we need to change that entire scenario there. It needs to be an active murder, because it could be a murder. They could have a knife. Look at China or Japan or wherever that's happened.
There was just a mass killing in Canada here. Body count was a lot higher than what we had here over the weekend.
Right.
Nobody's talking about it.
No, they're not. I saw that come across one of my feeds today. We have to work with law enforcement to become more vigilant as to what we're dealing with. If you don't want to carry a gun, then that's fine. Let the law enforcement officers handle it, but become a really good witness is what I will tell you to be. With officers, they're going to know generally what's going on. Obviously, the people that are egressing out of there, they're generally not They're trying to get away from the situation. The shooter's probably going to stay closer to inside the building, or you're going to see that person. It's very difficult because every situation is so much different. You're dealing with different schematics or different buildings, different layouts. You don't know what you're going into unless you've been into that place 100 times as an officer. And I stress this with officers. They have a very tough job to do, especially in an active murder situation like that. They're training, everything that they know kicks in, and it all comes in a split second, and they literally have seconds to make a decision to determine who is the bad guy and who the good people are.
And one of the things that we get, and I'm already seeing it on my Facebook page, and you see it every time there's a shooting like this. And again, you train for get yourself out of the situation unless the threat's right in front of you.
Right.
There's no sense in putting yourself at risk if you can get away. But thousands of Americans do every single year.
Mm-hmm.
And they make that decision. We know that thousands of times a year, Americans who are armed, just average everyday Americans, not law enforcement, not military, they don't even have that background, they do stop these shooters. It does happen.
Oh, yeah.
With regularity. And so you get a lot of people out there who will say, well, the idea that you're going to pull your gun and engage with somebody is ridiculous. But it literally happens thousands of times a year in this country alone. And if you're going to be a good witness, like you guys train, because you don't just train law enforcement, you do train civilians as well.
All the time. We actually train, with Fortress, we train a lot more civilians than we do with Bruzer. Bruzer is primarily a law enforcement company because of the product that we manufacture, the ML12, which is a 2-shot non-lethal pistol. And we use that a lot in corrections. We're seeing it more out on the street to replace the current electronic control devices that they have, or neuromuscular interrupters, whatever you want to call them. So it's a different way to train law enforcement because you're training them to go in where you're teaching a civilian to come out.
Now, with civilians, they don't have as many options, obviously, as law enforcement, but we are seeing a lot more civilians carry trauma packs. Mm-hmm. And just, basic tourniquet kits and things of that nature. Is that something that Fortress and Bruzer recommends for civilians?
Yeah, I do. We vehemently and adamantly want you to at least, at a minimum, have a trauma kit on you. Depending on how many people with you, do you have kids, things like that. As your children get older, you should teach them how to do this. I know it's an ugly situation, but if you go over to, I'm just going to use Israel as an example because I have friends there, their kids are taught this in health class.
Sure.
They're taught how to stop the bleed in health class. They have tourniquets. They have emergency bandages, or what we call Israeli battle dressings, with them at all times. They keep them in their backpacks. They're handed out in health class. At a minimum, that's what you should be doing because you never know who you could be saving. You could be in, let's look at the Manchester bombing in England. A lot of people jumped out of nowhere and just went to work. And they were able to save some of the people. More people could have been saved had more people been trained, though.
And again, the likelihood that this is ever going to happen to you is extremely slim and extremely rare because these things are not nearly as common as the press talks about. We will get to that later. But right now our focus is on Tommy with Bruzer Less Lethal and Fortress Defense Consultants because this is what they do. They train law enforcement and civilians in how to handle this stuff. And if you have any questions, send them to us or call 574-25-95-95-3. Tommy's already indicated that he would answer any of those questions that you had. This is obviously a big topic, and we're not going to be able to go over everything today, but we wanted to at least talk with Tommy because he's a professional, and you don't get to use the whole, well, Casey, you're just a radio host guy. You don't get to use that excuse to not listen to what I'm trying to say. So I brought a professional in to go ahead and talk with you all about that. We'll take more calls. We'll talk with Tommy a little bit here coming up on 95.3 MNC. And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. Joining us in studio is Tommy Teach. Yes, that's his real name. Somebody said that was pretty cool because every gun you own is a Tommy gun now. So, so there is that. But Tommy Teach is with Bruzer Less Lethal. They manufacture a less lethal device that is used by corrections, military, law enforcement all over the world. Actually, I almost said the country, but it's actually all over the world. And he's also a part of Fortress Defense Consultants, and they do tactical training for law enforcement as well as civilians across the country. And we have Tommy in to kind of talk about the situation we had over the weekend with the two shootings and situational awareness type stuff. And we're going to head to the phone lines real quick. And we have Len. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Casey, and good afternoon, Mr. Teach. I'm glad you could join Casey for this little to-do. I, being retired military and an ex-South Bend police officer, I disagree with the Mr. Teach's admonition to get out of the line of fire and get out of the system where the active killer is. Casey, maybe you can answer a question for me. I've heard it one time on the TV about the El Paso shooting that there was an Army active duty trooper in the building. He heard the shooting. He was armed, even though it was supposedly a no fires or no gun zone or gun-free zone. And he made the tactical decision to shepherd people out of the building because he did not see the visual. He did not visually see the shooter. He heard the gunshots. I cannot understand that because of the Martin shooting we had in Elkhart here a while back. It just amazes me that people would not engage the shooter to prevent the deaths of innocent civilians, especially if you're carrying a gun and you've been trained how to use it. So I don't understand that, and I don't agree with it.
Okay. All right, Len, appreciate the call. Thank you much. So, Tommy, Len says, I got a gun, trained. Why wouldn't I seek out the shooter?
Well, in that situation with the former retired Army personnel, he was gathering up children.
Yeah, he got a bunch of kids out.
There was a bunch of kids, and he got them out of there. Me, as somebody that's highly trained, like some of my other friends and some of the law enforcement, we're going to go and we will stop that. But not everybody is geared to that. I mean, not everybody that carries a gun is geared to that. They're taught to get out of there. They're taught to use the gun as the absolute last moment, and this is what we have to do. Me personally, I would have sought out the shooter possibly, or at least protected the people that I could where I was. I would have tried to find cover and concealment and place myself accordingly to where the gunshots were, even if I didn't see the gun, to try to shuffle people out of there. That's what we do. And, by then the police are coming in and our rule of thumb actually is to have your gun holstered when the police show up, but that's not always possible. And we need to work more with the police departments, and there are products out there that we don't make. I know of one. It's a sash that you keep in your pocket or attached to your belt that you can throw over you, and it says, armed citizen or whatever, or security, or if you're a police officer, you can get in. It says police on it. Mm-hmm. Things like that. If you're a plainclothes officer or you're just off duty, to identify yourself. We need to work more with law enforcement to figure out how we can overcome that, so we don't get CCW holders shot accidentally and
sure.
because they don't know what's going on, because they have that split second to make that decision.
And again, there are those of us who are veterans. There are those, like Len, again, former cop, veteran as well. You, veteran, work with law enforcement as a tactical trainer. Those people are going to be more adept at doing that. But, what if this soldier left those kids there, went trying to find the shooter found the kids? Right. Now all the kids are dead. So exactly. If you ask me, he did the absolute right thing. He put himself in a position to protect the most vulnerable of the population. But what about, those out there who don't have that experience? They've got their license to carry, but they don't have the training. They don't have the experience. They've never been put in that sort of environment. Maybe they go to the range every now and then. We're always preaching about taking classes. Doesn't matter what your skill level is. First of all, you have to keep your skills sharp anyway. But what are some other recommendations that you have for people?
You can start with, there are some classes out there. You can look them up online. There's two people that I know of, and they're legal classes. Actually, I've had some friends take it before they've actually taken a gun class. Mm-hmm. So they'll know the legal parameters of a carry concealed holder and what their responsibilities are and what to expect if you get in a shooting. After that, you need to basically, my opinion, you need to get medical training, and you need to start with a level 1 handgun. You don't need to go in there. You're not going to be a door kicker. You're not going through the door. You're not a police officer. That's not your job. Okay? I mean, could it happen? Yeah, possibly. For example, if you're in your home, you know where your kids are. Where's the first place you're going to go? You're going to run at your kids. Where's your gun? It's back in your bedroom. You need to be cognizant of this. You need to practice this. There's airsoft classes you can go through for situational awareness type things. Force on force is what we actually call it. We teach citizens this every day: how to get in and out of your vehicle, how to get, shuffle your kids into a vehicle if you're under fire. I mean, it can happen anywhere. Parking lots are one of the most dangerous places on the planet.
Sure.
Parking garages are even worse, in my opinion.
Well, we just had this massive fight at the Kroger in Elkhart here a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you had dozens of people involved. What if one of them draws a gun? All those people in the parking lot now they're bystanders, and they've got to know just the basics of being able to keep themselves and their family safe.
Right, and there are courses out there. We actually teach a women's self-defense class. It's a 4-hour class through Fortress that we teach this kind of stuff. Some situational awareness, how to get around an attacker, how to get through and deal with vagrants that come up on the street. For some reason, I am a random magnet for vagrants. Once, twice a month, somebody will walk up to me. I don't know. It's the bald head.
What drew me to you?
Yeah. Is that what it is? That sounded a little weird.
Yeah.
So, you have to learn how to deal with that. I'm sorry I can't help you. I'm sorry I can't help you. And your third time is get back. And you need to be very forceful with your voice about that and point at them, because what that's going to do is that's going to allow other people to see what's going on.
Yeah, well,
they're going to turn their head and
they were ignoring it. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, something's going on. What's happening?
But the best way to do this is to start with a level 1 handgun class. There are, we have Fortress. There's a couple really good instructors here in town. If we're not in Rochester or in Sturgis, those are the two places we generally teach in the area. We will come here. But there are a couple of guys here in town that I'm not gonna shuck off. There's
and Second Amendment Arms does this.
Yes, Second Amendment Arms.
Their course is highly touted. But you also were talking here because Joe was like, yeah, I've got some first aid training, and then you recommended a course to him too, because just having this basic knowledge, in case there's an accident at your home, you fall or something falls on you, or you cut yourself, or, God forbid, a tool gets a hold of your arm.
Right.
But then that all applies in situations like this that happen out in the public as well, where you could really help some people's lives. Maybe somebody gets hit by a car. Maybe you're involved in a situation like this.
I'll be honest with you. I have never treated anybody from a violent encounter. Everybody I have ever treated has been from a motor vehicle accident. Every time.
But the same principles apply.
Same principles apply. You're going to run into more accidents in cars than you are anything else, and especially if you travel, if you're a salesman or something like that, you will see a lot of that. And you may be the first one there, you may be the last one there. There may be a police officer there, but no ambulance. We teach a basic 4-hour class. It's emergency bandages and tourniquets and things like that. The basic stuff you need to have on you. And then there are other classes that. We will bring people in. We have 2 EMTs on our staff that will come in and teach a longer course if necessary. If that's something that you want, that's what we will do. There are other classes out there. NAMIT is one of them. That is a very well known. We're all NAMIT TCCC medics, so we're tactical medics. Mm-hmm. We can plug bullet holes and tourniquets and Israeli battle dressings and chest seals, and it's a little bit more in depth than that, but that's a pretty in-depth class right there, and it's actually taught here locally.
This might be a good thing for companies to get involved with too.
I agree,
and teach their entire staff. Like maybe if you're a media company without locked doors and security and things like that.
Well, most places are wide open. There are some places that do have locked doors, but then again, you never know what somebody's got in a bag.
There you go.
You can have industrial accidents. We sit here and we make our schools so they're fireproof. But when was the last time you saw a tourniquet and Israeli battle dressing in any school? We have a snivel kit at the front office. If little Jimmy cuts his finger or something, we don't. We should be training our teachers that way. They don't want to go armed into school. I get it. I'm fine with that. That's your prerogative.
Not everybody's comfortable with it.
Not everybody's comfortable with it, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But at least get the medical training so if something does happen, and it could be little Jimmy falling off the swing set and cracking his head open.
Sure.
So.
All right, so Tommy, how do people get a hold of you guys if they want to look into some of this stuff? And if there's anything else in the last 30 seconds or so you want to get out there, let us know.
You can contact us. You can contact Bruzer at sales@bruzerlesslethal.com or go to our website, bruzerlesslethal.com, or you can contact Fortress at fortressdefense.com and ask for Frank. and he'll take care of you.
All right, Tommy, we appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
You, brother.
Again, Tommy Teach with Bruzer, Less Lethal, and Fortress Defense Consultants. We got more coming up. News Talk 95.3, Michiana's news channel.